views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Welcome to Bronxtalk. The Bronx Artist Documentary Project has proven to be one of the most exciting and innovative ways to develop and promote the depth of Bronx creativity and the expanse of Bronx talent. Forming a unique bond between the borough's artists and photographers, the Bronx Artist Documentary Project, BADP if you will, has produced some brilliant work. And now tonight on this show, for the very first time exclusively, you will get a chance to see the gorgeous new book that documents this extraordinary project in advance of the release party, which will be at Montefiore Medical Center on Wednesday evening. The phones are open tonight, so if you'd like to call in and join the conversation, 718-960-7261 is our phone number, or you can send questions or comments in an email to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org or post them on our Facebook page, and we'll read them on the air during a future edition of our program. As an aside, I will tell you, just so you know, tonight is the actual 21st anniversary of this program that debuted on October 5th, 1994, and also tonight begins a fun two-part series on Bronx artists. Next week, we'll have a fascinating show with a Bronx artist who turns garbage into art. Okay, nonetheless, for the here and now, we will talk about the Bronx Artist Documentary Project with Bronx artist extraordinaire Daniel Haubin. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Gary.
And his wife Judith Lane. Welcome back also. Both of whom worked tirelessly to get to this point where we now have a book, and I'm going to show you the book in a minute, documenting this incredible concept. Good evening. Thank you both for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you so much for your support throughout this project, which has mushroomed into almost 2 years now that we've been working
and let
on
me tell you something. When I got the book right on the table, we're going to show it. We're going to show in detail. When folks in the Bronx see what this looks like, this is something you're going to want to have. Danny, just start with the the Bronx Artist Documentary Project for people who are not familiar with it, and then we'll ask Judy to talk about the book.
Well, for the record, this was a project that was really intended to foster connectivity within the cultural community in the Bronx. It was all about discovering that there were artists in the Bronx that, you know,
more than we
realized, and came up with a notion of maybe visiting artists and painting them as they work, but then, you know, how many artists want me lurking around in their studio? And then we thought about, well, you know, perhaps it would be less invasive and, you know, more possibilities would open up, making it a photography project. And then happily we, connected with Mike Camber in the Bronx Documentary Center, and he came on board and lifted this project to become what it really was, the documentation of 80 Bronx visual artists by 30 Bronx-based photographers, artists at work at either on the streets, in their studios, within the borders of the Bronx. And it was a remarkable journey. And then Judy said, let's make it last.
Let's have a record other than the galleries and people have seen it. I mean, we've seen it. We did talk about some of the shows, and we did a show on this.
Mm-hmm.
But the resultant work to me was really incredibly spectacular because you really had two artists in every photograph. I mean, you were talking about the beauty of, you know, and I was talking about the expanse of Bronx art and the painters and sculptors and everything else. But we have equal photography talent in the Bronx. And so they came and did their thing, and you have just
This is
an explosion.
100%. It's a photography project. And the photographer, Mike Camber, as the curator, and each of these 30 photographers should get the full credit for the wonder and splendor of this project, and the fact that it's taken on a life. And this exhibition of it at Montefiore Hospital is the 4th time the 100 photographs are being shown.
Right. I remember that they were shown at the Andrew Friedman Home. It's been on Montefiore Medical Center is going to have it. All right. So before Judy speaks, are you ready? Is everybody ready? This is really the first time. I mean, you said maybe only a couple of people have handled it.
Yes.
I am truly honored to present to you, ladies and gentlemen, in the Bronx, the Bronx Artist Documentary Project, and it's a weighty book, a coffee table book extraordinaire. Even let's just talk about the cover. I guess that's up to you, Judy.
Yes,
go right ahead.
Thought we'd put a picture of one of the artists at work on the cover, but how do you choose? And how do you choose one artist of 80 or one of the 30 photographers' work? It's not really fair. It's a project that's a big group. And one of the photographers...
Can we get a tight shot so people could see this beautiful book there? Go ahead.
Ignacio Soltero suggested that we have a cover with you know, items in it that gave a hint to what was inside. So the materials of the artist, both the photographer and the other visual artists. And I said, make sure that camera's front and center because it's a photography project, and then just sort of frame it with all the other things. And
can we get a shot of it? I'd love to show
He did
cover.
a great job.
There we go. That's what
and then we were trying to figure out how do you make it about the Bronx too? And so I said,
well,
stick a Metro card in there and make it look like somebody, like a printmaker used it to spread some ink or something.
So in here, and we're going to show some of the individual photographs, but this is, oh, look at that. It opens right up to the picture
that
of
was
Danny Alvin.
unplanned, folks.
That was completely unplanned.
It's a trick book.
Not that I did not want it. We are going to show that picture, but but so each, let's just, at random, this page. Now, what am I looking at?
So you're looking at the artist David Yearwood.
The youngest artist in the project. He was 19 when he was
19 years
photographed.
old, and he's an artist who does his work at the Point, in Hunts Point.
Right.
And they have facilities there for folks who don't have a permanent studio of their own. And so we had 7 artists involved in this project who make their artwork in the Point.
Wow.
And Carrie Clark, who sort of runs the program there, helped facilitate that to happen. And that was a very special part of this project.
They're going to throw up some pictures. Take a look at this.
That's
who is
Chris
this?
March. He has a studio in Kingsbridge. And he was the last artist we got into the project.
The photo by Ron Turner.
We tried to contact him at the beginning of the project, but he didn't respond. And then about 10 months later, he finally looked at the post on Facebook and got back to us. And
I said, no, it's...
You know, as a photograph, I mean, you know, and Ron is on City Island and is just such a wonderful photographer and has a beautiful gallery.
Ron is great. This is...
I don't know what happened to the credits on there, but they should be showing the credits.
But you could say who it is.
This is, there he is. This is Dennis Red Moon Darkeem, who's, what neighborhood is he in? In the southeast.
He's been on our show, I believe.
Yeah, could
he
very
might
well
have been.
be.
And what's so interesting is the photographer decided to shoot this in black and white. I mean,
this was actually done with film. This
we
photographer
allowed,
shot in film.
I say we, I had nothing to do with it. Although I found out that I am quoted on the back. But the artists and the photographers were allowed to the artists did what they did, and here's our friend Linda Cunningham.
Yeah, well, you know, I guess Mike probably made that call about...
Well, the only thing we said is the reason we're doing this project is because visual artists don't get to be seen. You see their work.
Right.
We want to show who's making the work, what they're making, how they're making it, and where they're making it. So if the photographers could take a picture that shows as much of that as they can. Not every picture shows those things, but that would tell the story behind the visual art that you get to see.
And if you say to a real photographer, as opposed to those of us who just pull out our cell phones and take a picture, you say to a real photographer, make something out of it. They're going to deal with the lighting. They're going to do all these
They
kinds
are
of
all
things.
going to approach it with their own, in their own way. And they all did. And you'll see.
Just like an artist.
Like any visual artist.
For us, it was so exciting to begin to get a sense of the aesthetic and the unique way of seeing the world that each different artist photographer had. So when they showed the photographs that the different photographers took, we could begin to get a sense. Oh, that somebody likes these angles, and somebody
it
else,
really was.
so
what I just love about it, and that's what I introduced the show with. It really is two artists working together, because each artist is obviously creating his own painting, and there were sculptors and all different kinds of things. We're going to show some more. There's a graffiti artist on a wall, so then that had to be captured, and then you're taking a photographer who's got a vision of the world. Like, look at this. This is just extraordinary.
Yeah, that's
Elena Bauza.
It's Elena, right? We know Elena's been
Photo
on the
by
show.
Nina
We've had so many of them on the show.
And,
Photo by Nina Robinson.
And I love the scale of that piece that she's working on, and how it she gives it scale by being in front of it like that, and the contrast of the light and the color.
Judy, you had well, we'll look at this one, and then I want to ask Judy about the book itself. So now, who is this?
That's Cess. That's by Brian Nobili.
Right.
And Brian actually introduced us to Cess. See, Brian is also a graffiti artist, so I approached him as an artist, and he said, no, I know artists better than me. Let me photograph them. And then he brought in
and look, and so there was the dog, and the dog was there, but it's just it is so, and folks, I got to tell you, when they showed me this book,
all Bronx.
it is all Bronx. It is our creativity, it is our soul, it is, and I think you'd have to say it was highly successful, because you made bonds between artists and photographers, and you really have a. This is, to me, this is our BX right here. Anyway, Judy, the process of making a book, which and I know I've spoken to both of you over the time that putting it together. This wasn't just like, all right, let's just take some photographs and make a book.
No. Well, the thing is, when Danny got the idea for the project, I knew it would be a lot of work. And I knew the project itself, and I knew that I would be sucked into it, which I was, and it's fine, and I knew that I could help, but I also am very reluctant to see a lot of hard work just evaporate when it's over. And
in other words, there's a show, and you do the show, and you, Danny, of course, exhibits all over the Bronx, all over the world.
That happens
and
so
we've
often.
put a lot of work into shows before, and then the paintings come down, and they come home, or they get sold, and then it's over with.
That was it, right?
And enough already. So I said, let's create something tangible that will stick around, that will get put into the archives of the history of the Bronx. Let's make a book. And I knew I was saying, basically, I'll make a book, because...
Well, Danny was busy painting the Bronx.
No, it's not his thing.
I should mention, by the way, and at some point we'll get a wide shot, but that set that we use is a Danny Halbin painting that we use. So just to make it clear, there you can see the beautiful Bronx. So what were the difficulties? What were the things that worked?
Well,
everything was difficult.
The main difficulty is that I'd never done such a thing before, so I had to learn and teach myself. And so I did a lot of research. I had to find a book broker. I found a guy in Hawaii who deals with printers in China. I had to learn all about conversion to CMYK for the CMYK presses, because they're different than your desktop publishing.
Again, totally at random, and I deliberately ignored the Danny Halbin page on it. But this is my buddy Ira Merritt, who is a photographer. But the other thing was to make sure that the reproductions were worthy reproductions.
Well, I spent a lot of time
for the quality of what it is.
We had to get color proofs. I went through the color proofs. I changed 25 or 30 of the pictures to make sure that the colors were correct. I went back and forth with the book broker. All this took a lot more time than I thought it would, of course. And then the book broker took some time when he shouldn't have taken time. Also, just collecting the information. This book is not just the pictures that are in the show.
Okay, I have
There's
really,
100
this
pictures
is our
in the
first
show.
look at it, yeah.
The pictures on the right-hand side are generally the ones that are in the exhibition. Each artist has 1, 2, or 3 more pictures, so there's
So you can see the artist
or-
at work. Wow.
yeah,
Oh,
3 or
this is-
4
I
times
can't-
the number
material.
of.
Good night. Gary's
that
going to
they
go home and
use.
read the book. Oh, it's just
And
beautiful.
we
This is
had-
our first look at it. Beautiful.
We had to get little quotes, statements from
each
the artist.
and it had to be
And we
edited.
didn't want artist statements because nobody wants to read a book of artist statements. That would be really boring. We wanted something more personal.
Oh, and then, excuse me, I'm sorry. Finish your sentence because I just
Well-
discovered something else. Go ahead.
Yeah, we wanted something personal from the artist that talked either about their relationship to the Bronx, how they became an artist, maybe about their studio
Something that meant
space.
something.
Yeah.
And then the photographers, they have their professional bio or a personal statement. Some of them chose to do a
so
personal
I
statement.
want to mention because and then each photographer, I don't know if you
The
can
book
see
is
it.
divided by
Here we go.
photographer.
Each photographer has his own page as well. And what I love is it, and oh my goodness, there's
Here,
there's
show
a whole,
this one.
Show this one.
This will give an example of the reason we did the project was to create communication and connection between the creative forces
So
in
this
the
is a
Bronx.
map.
This shows where the photographers traveled in order to document the
So it
artists.
made the- you
so
made
the
the connection.
connections that were created in the Bronx as a result of this. There's something else in the book that I
Oh,
need
what,
you
you
to
want
show.
to tell me? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. It's in the back.
This is the difficulty of never seeing it.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
literally debuting it on the show because
This is what I
they
want
told
you
me
to
only
show.
2 or 3
So
people have seen it.
This was another whole project in and of itself to get a work of art from each artist that they felt represented them, and then find out from each artist how they wanted to be contacted, and have this directory of Bronx artists.
So if you want to find a photographer
alphabetical.
or an artist,
I like that.
you can look and find, okay, I like this photograph. Well, now I know how to get in touch with this photographer. This is his website. This is his contact information.
So it's not just, okay, we have a book of pictures.
This is a
of pretty
reference
pictures.
book
Wow.
for
Listen,
Bronx
I haven't made
artists.
my sale yet to my friends and neighbors in the Bronx. You looking for a Christmas gift or a holiday gift to give
Good
to
timing.
somebody to talk about what, this is my hometown, this is where I live, these are the people I live with. Wow, this is outstanding. Okay, can we look at some more just for fun? Right, Dahlia, we have more
do
pictures,
it.
right? We could put, okay, so what do we got here?
Moses Ross.
Moses Ross right up here in Riverdale. Wonderful
Angel Franco.
a multimedia artist and printmaker.
And Danny, every artist works differently. Their studios look
Well, that's
different.
the
and that's the beauty
fascinating
of it.
thing
And they're
about it.
beautiful. Look at the color. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Keep going, folks. I'm
So yeah,
loving
these
this.
are, again, another Ray Lopez at the Point,
Right.
working at the Point. And what was wonderful through the course of time, we had time to meet these people, interact with them, and in some cases interview them.
And really, then that is why, in some ways, this became a really successful endeavor because that's what happened. Now, this I just love because wait a minute, if this isn't the BX, I don't know what is. Certainly
well,
our buddy Bio
certainly.
from Tats Crew.
Absolutely.
Photographed by Ricky Flores. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, take down the name. Look at that. And how clever of the photographer to take the picture to represent what it's like when they do their. What else? We got more pictures? I don't know. Listen,
Yeah, there's a
folks,
few
after
more.
the show, I'm going home. This is my copy of the book, right?
That's your
Yes.
copy,
Oh, my
Gary.
goodness.
This is Lucia Hernandez, and she's also an artist at the Point who works with kind of indigenous artifacts, feathers, and she's very spiritual in the work and tradition that she works. And we did have an opportunity to really get to know her a little bit. She also has a garden in Hunts Point. She's a gardener, a real person of the.
Now,
of
here's
the
a
earth.
photographer who took some liberties, but as they all did. This is Mary Colby. I have Viorel Florescu. I hope I pronounced that right.
Yep. And she's an artist out in City Island.
And if you really want to understand this picture, look to the left and look at the shadow.
Marvelous shape there.
Wow.
Beautiful light.
Fantastic.
Well,
Yeah.
if anybody's a pro, it's VRL. He's such a
It's all the people in
amazing,
this
yeah.
book.
Yeah.
This one, I remember we used this photo, I think, when we promoted the original gallery. Can we
Okay.
put that back up? I love that
Yeah.
picture. Who is that?
That's Ann Humanfeld, and I've never been to her studio, but I'd really love to visit
She's
it
got
because
got a
more
nice
space
studio.
than you do,
it
Danny.
looks like
Yeah.
a loft. You know, I mean, it just, you wouldn't imagine there to be such a studio like that in the Bronx.
Now let's see. You said there were
this is
bookmarks.
for
I'm getting a
you.
bookmark.
So when you read it tonight, you can just
There's a
now on
bookmark
that
of all my
bookmark.
Bronx
There's
buddies.
one picture by of every artist.
Wow.
I fit them all in.
And while you're talking, I'm going to put my Bronx
Okay.
Artist Documentary
Okay.
Project button on my collar here.
Yep.
And so, what is coming up on Wednesday?
So Montefiore Hospital has a new curator, Jody Moyce, and she has decided to make our Bronx Artist Documentary Project the debut exhibition in the new Art Views Gallery.
So they have a new Art Views Gallery at
in the
Montefiore Medical
main
Center.
building
Yep.
on 210th Street, and you know, we're just so thrilled that you know, Montefiore has breathed new life into this project, you know, bringing it to the North Bronx for the first time, and that they, you know, it corresponds with having the book. And so it's the book launch. It's an opportunity for people to
Can they buy it?
to get books
Yes.
that
Oh, good.
they
They can
buy it. They
have
can also buy it
pre-ordered,
online.
or you know, to pick up the books if they're part of the project, or to buy
Get
the books
one of
and
these things.
get a bookmark.
All those who supported it through our Kickstarter campaign can pick up their book at this event also.
And so please, you know, if you know, you're available at 6:30 to 8:30.
6:30. Yeah, we have that info.
on
Can we put that up on the
Wednesday
screen? That would be
evening,
so cool. I'm proudly wearing
Jody Moyce and her assistant Olivia Davis.
And where is the
worked
gallery
very
on
hard
the
to-
Montefiore
Right in the
Medical
main
Center campus?
entrance. It's
The main
actually going to be
entrance.
held
But
in the reception will be in the East Garden, so it'll be outside.
Oh, East Garden, it said West Garden, I thought.
West Garden.
There
Sorry,
you go.
West Garden.
That's
yes.
what we have on
yes,
our
West
little
Garden.
note there. The
But
gallery.
On the left.
and the latest weather report is looking good. Wednesday's going to be a little warmer, so bring a light jacket anyway, because it's, you know.
And
the
is the
sun
gallery going to
setting.
be outdoors?
No, the gallery's
The
inside.
gallery is
reception.
a
But the
large hall
reception is-
just inside.
All right,
So
I have to do
we're-
something that is, I do not paint, nor do I photograph, but I did write some words that are on the back, and I'm going to read my own words.
All right.
Well, I was so honored I'm actually in the book. The concept of the Bronx, and this is really how I feel about it, the concept of the Bronx Artist Documentary Project is not only brilliant, it is also distinctly Bronx. We are artistic, creative, talented, and above all, collectively independent. We don't look for outsiders to tell our story. We do it ourselves with our own photographers. The result is a rich, colorful, glowing representation of the best of the Bronx, and that's what this is all. Wow, who wrote that?
Golden,
Absolutely
golden
fantastic.
words.
So these will actually be on sale.
Yes.
Yes.
Should I ask how much
Yes.
it is? It
It's
says on the back
$50.
$50 is
There will
the-
be a
But what a
Retail.
wonderful, wonderful gift. Danny, looking back at this, surprises, things that you hadn't expected.
Oh boy,
I mean-
how much time do
We
we
don't have a
have?
lot of time left.
Oh,
but I
well.
want to just kind of stepping back and
Well,
saying, gee, what did we
you
get?
know, the
Do we have
really
more pictures, by the way, folks? Go ahead.
the really positive thing was the discovery of so many artists, and in today's time, people are working in. Art is so many different things.
Leave
you
that
know.
up. I love that.
We
Go
had
ahead.
artists in this book who, from 19 to 93 years old, you know, from traditional easel painters to street and graffiti artists to sculptors and printmakers and everything in between. And just to have an opportunity to meet and see, we had some gatherings. Those are my favorite times when the artists gathered and went around the room and introduced them, you know, each other and themselves. And we met people like the Royal King Bee and you know, the Terrible Tea
Can we put that
Kid
picture
and-
back
and-
up? I'm sorry, Danny. You were talking, and I really want to focus on. To me,
Oh, yeah.
this is so Bronx. Now, who is this artist?
This is Evan Bishop.
Evan Bishop, and he
lives
works with
in,
the TV on. I love it.
the North Bronx somewhere.
Yeah, he's in the Northeast Bronx.
Photograph.
And,
Now, do we have more?
and Evan is also a body. He does a body painting.
Wow.
That's really cool. This is Tammy Whoopsy.
Tammy Whoopsy. She's in the South
Printmaker
Bronx.
or lithographer?
She's a
Yeah, her story is really interesting in the book. You'll read where she said when she moved to the Bronx, her presses wouldn't fit through the door, so they had to cut the door bigger, and that was the starting.
And what part of the
start
Bronx?
of doors opening for her in the Bronx.
Somewhere
She's in the Mott Haven.
area.
Right. And this?
That's
Cinnamon Willis.
We
she's
posted
the
this on Facebook, and everybody reacted to this picture.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's both a visual artist. She creates these art dolls, and also a photographer. She did both jobs.
Really?
She's the
Is
only
she the only
one.
one?
Yep.
She's the only
So
one.
she's
Yeah,
also
yeah.
a photographer.
Crossover.
Yes.
Wow.
yes.
She's just
here we go.
wonderful
Yeah, I don't know who that
person.
is.
So, I was so happy when we first presented the project to a group of photographers at the Bronx Documentary Center, and one gentleman came up to me after the presentation, and he said, "Who's photographing you?" And I said, "Well, I guess you are."
And that
it
was
turns
Adi,
out it was
our buddy Adi,
Adi Talwar.
And you had never met him
No,
before?
I'd never met
Oh,
him.
to me that is a wonderful connection.
I wouldn't have wanted anyone else. I mean, he is a marathon man. The sessions with him in the studio were 6 hours, 7 hours.
Wow.
For this
More
project.
grueling than it is to do.
Yeah, I had to
work
put
like
in
the one
it.
that's on.
He didn't want the happy-go-lucky. He wanted the kind of
I bet you
bedraggled artist.
Well, maybe that's who you are. Anyway, listen, Wednesday night you're going to pick up the book, The Bronx Artist Documentary Project. Judith Lane, thank you for the book. Danny, thank you for your dedication
Thank you,
to Bronx
Gary.
arts. And yay, and thank you for
right.
letting us debut it on this show. Nobody has seen it yet. It's like unbelievable. Folks, we do have one bit of business to take care of. Last week we talked a lot about the Jerome Park Reservoir and the Access program. We had a comment on Facebook we want to read. David H.H. said on Facebook, "I do not understand what the big deal is. People in Westchester and above fish and boat in these waters all the time. Letting people walk around the water is not a big deal." I think he's a bit sarcastic about that, but we appreciate David for his comments. And if you have further questions or comments on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, then you can send an email to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org or put it on our Facebook page, and we'll read it on the air during a future edition of our program. We ask you to please like Bronx Talk on Facebook, and you can check out our archives at bronxnet.org. We're on the lower right navigation bar, and you can see everything that we've done. Next week, as I mentioned earlier, a part 2 of Bronx Artwork, as we'll have an artist who turns garbage, literally garbage, into art. Should be great. Thanks to producer Dahlia Gonzalez, the director Shirley Arrieta, and Neilani's on the prompter, and the Clyde, and the cast of thousands. And thanks to our beautiful, wonderful Bronx artists and photographers. That's all I got to say. Good night.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.